Bride turns around at the altar and bursts into tears upon spotting uninvited guests. Every girl dreams of her wedding day. It's a daydream of wearing a beautiful princess gown surrounded by flowers and beauty. So it goes without saying that if you could, you would want a whole camera crew to document the event. It's a memory you could watch and relive for the rest of your life. But what the videographer caught on camera will stay with one woman forever. She was a music and dance teacher teaching classes such as grade 1 ballet, grade 1 tap, preparatory modern jazz, as well as freestyle and acro to children from 4 to 11 years old. Dancing was her life, and she loved sharing her passion with her young students, but spending all her time dancing left little time to plan a wedding. Sharing the bulk of the wedding plans between the bride-to-be, Liz Ravenhall, and her fiancé, Ollie, they were set on a traditional ceremony in a gorgeous stone church. They both managed to get all the preparations done, some together and some separately. But the time alone gave Ollie the time he needed to work some magic. The day of the wedding finally arrived. Liz made her way down the long stone aisle toward her husband-to-be. She had no idea what was waiting for her, and the surprise on an already emotional day would leave her in tears. Ollie waited knowingly at the altar, although he kept a remarkably straight face right until the very last moment. Halfway down the aisle, the videographer started recording, and we see someone getting into a good position to take photographs. The photographer finds his place to the right of the aisle, but strangely, he doesn't even look at the bride. Instead, he turns to look at the guests. Another man with a camera appears on the left, and he also doesn't seem to be looking toward the bride. What were they doing? Well, Liz doesn't notice that the photographers are facing the wrong way. Everyone else does, and the guests began to get a bit suspicious. Liz and Ollie are still mesmerized by each other. They have eyes only for their partners as they stand waiting at the altar. Most of the guests are now moving around in their seats, clearly torn between watching the bride and seeing what's happening behind them. As they begin to put together what's happening, you can see smiles and knowing looks. Then the groom peeks over his shoulder. It's obvious that Ollie knows exactly what's going on, but he's subtle about his quick glances. Liz doesn't notice, but is beginning to become worried about what the holdup is about. It felt like she'd been standing up there for a long time, and coupled with nerves, she begins to feel uneasy. Perhaps she could hear all the shuffling going on in the pews. Behind her, though, all her family and friends have their gazes focused on the balcony at the rear of the church. Barely anyone is paying attention to the bride and the groom at this point. That's because something amazing was about to happen. Everyone was waiting with bated breath. Liz for the I do's and everyone else for something else entirely. Ollie had gone to the trouble of organizing a wedding day surprise that his wife would remember forever. Finally, he touches Liz's arm and she turns around, clearly not understanding what's happening. Ollie points to the balcony at the back of the chapel and her eyes follow, now that she could see exactly what her husband had done for her. At that moment, the performance begins. Seemingly out of nowhere, some 30 children assembled on the balcony burst into song, singing the beautiful lyrics to Christina Perri's "1,000 Years." Liz slowly starts realizing what's happening, and the look on her face is utterly priceless. With such tension built from the emotional day, of course, Liz immediately burst into tears. She spots the children, gasps, and brings a tissue to her face as she tries to take it all in. It's clearly an overwhelming moment for her. Ollie endearingly takes his wife in his arms and kisses her on her forehead. Some of these children had been learning at the dance school J.K.'s dance for months or even years. Thankfully, Ollie knew how much Liz's students meant to her. And behind her back, he organized a tribute during the wedding ceremony that brought the dance and theater instructor to tears. He knew that she'd wanted them at the wedding all along. And the kids were doing a stunning job of bringing the song's emotional lyrics to life. Indeed, many of the people in the church are in tears. "Darling, don't be afraid. I've loved you for 1,000 years. I'll love you for 1,000 more," they sang. Liz, meanwhile, wipes tears from her eyes. These aren't just any children, though. In fact, they're Liz's students, making the situation all the more emotional for her. It turned out that Ollie and one of Liz's colleagues at J.K.'s dance company had jointly organized the surprise. From secret rehearsals to the logistics of getting 30 children into a wedding quickly and quietly, it was no easy feat. The look on Liz's face shows just how well everyone involved had kept the performance a secret. After all, her expression when she turns around is one of pure disbelief. It's clear at that moment that she never expected something like this to happen on her big day. Her mouth was still wide open in an O of surprise, which she modestly tried to cover up with her hand. As the children continue through the moving lyrics of the song, the video captures every tune perfectly. There was even a camera up on that balcony getting close-ups of all the students singing their hearts out. Ollie put all this together for her, and he was happy to stand back quietly while she had a private moment listening to the sweet voices beaming down at her. When the song draws to an end, all the kids wave ecstatically at their teacher. Stunned by their surprise appearance and moved by the beautiful singing, Liz was still in tears. But she fondly returned their waves, even though her makeup was possibly ruined. She didn't care in the least. In the meantime, the rest of the congregation grinned up at the kids, happy that they were somehow involved in the touching moment. The final shot of the video shows the bride making a heart sign with her hands and pointing towards the balcony. Her adorable students had made her big day that little bit more magical, but the photos of the day carry on. The couple leaves the chapel showered by rose petals, and when their first dance came around, dance teacher Liz showed off with some graceful dips and turns. With such a thoughtful husband and caring wife, we're sure this couple will grow old together and share many more surprises, joy, and love.